I told you my husband and I share our schedule.
Your
our
schedules
schedules
weren't
are
allowed.
along, yeah. Yeah, so there was one time he really needed to be in a meeting, and there was no way he couldn't be in that meeting. Right? And I also had to teach at that same time. So, and this was the case at the time. I didn't have anyone around that I could hand the baby over to and go and teach. So I did what every mother from my part of the world will instinctively do. I wrapped him at my back.
You can say.
Yeah, I took him behind me, and then I was teaching the students.
Oh my gosh!
Yes.
Oh
My
my
husband
god!
came back right in between and took the baby, but at least for some 20, 30 minutes I had to do that.
My
So I
god!
remember the students were looking at me and they were like, so in that day, the class wasn't about what we came to learn, it was about the baby.
It was about.
It was like, oh, do you have another bag? Is he comfortable? And I had to explain to them, he is totally fine. Back home, this is what we do and all that. And yeah. And so when you're in some situations, you are forced to take action. Like, think on the spot, right?
Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 12 of the Dairy Mom podcast. My name is Diana Adair. I am the founder of the Dairy Mom. We inspire, educate, and empower mothers who may be struggling to reclaim their dreams or who may have temporarily set aside their ambitions due to the demands of motherhood. On the Dairy Mom podcast, we bring you powerful stories from audacious mothers around the world who defy societal expectations and harness their strength to juggle both roles of motherhood and the pursuit of their personal and professional ambitions successfully. Before we begin today's conversation, I want to take a moment to say thank you. Thank you to all of our new subscribers, and thank you to all who have been with us from the beginning. I appreciate you all very much. Today's episode is the full story of our 5th series on Motherhood Without Limits. We are honored to have our special guest join us from the United States of America. Her name is Dr. Ethel Sefakor. Dr. Sefakor is a passionate instructional designer and educator with over 10 years of experience in higher education. She holds 2 master's degrees and a PhD. With a background in technology and Spanish, she brings a unique global perspective to her work, crafting engaging courses that make learning accessible and meaningful. Originally from Ghana, Dr. Sefakor's love for languages led her to master Spanish, including time spent in Cuba to deepen her skills. She's married to her incredibly supportive husband, Dr. Nana Boadum, and together they have 3 energetic boys and a girl. Outside of work, Dr. Sefakor enjoys cooking, exploring places on road trips, and keeping up with the latest trends in AI and education. Her story is one of resilience, courage, and breaking barriers to life and career. She believes balancing motherhood and ambition is possible and powerful. She also believes societal expectations should not decide a mother's path. If you're ready for today's conversation, grab your pens and notebooks and join me as I speak to our special guest. Hello, Dr. Sefakor. Welcome to the Dairy Mom podcast. How are you doing today?
I am doing well, and you?
I'm doing awesome. Thank you so much for making the time to join us today. We are very, very happy to have you. And I'm hoping we are going to have a very interesting conversation today about all of your achievements, family, life, career, and all that. So thank you for joining us.
Okay, thank you for having me also.
Okay, so for starters, would like to know a little bit about your background in terms of growing up, what motherhood looked like for you as a child, and how that has influenced your decision in being a mother and a career woman as of now. So can you walk us through your childhood?
Okay, yes. So I grew up with a lot of family members that at the time I was born, I think my parents were not in the scene for some time. So I grew up with aunties, uncles, And at some point, one of my aunties more or less technically adopted me. So I grew up with her typically, like for a very long time. And I mean, my whole life I lived with her. So she is the mother figure in my life. And at some point, I had other aunties as well. There was one particular one I also lived with. And so it was two aunties, living with two aunties and cousins here and there. So I usually used to joke that the one who adopted me is my mother, and the other, I mean, she was the father figure more or less, and then the other one was the mother. So that's how I grew up among women. And a lot of cousins that from where I'm from, cousins that depend on how your relationship is with them, you can consider them as siblings, right? So I
Yeah.
have so many siblings because of that. I have a brother I grew up with as well. So it was just technically maybe the four of us, my little brother and I, my mother's, my two aunties, and it was growing up was it was different phases, right? There were phases where at some point I had to live with other family members who were not these aunties of mine. I had to live with different people at different times. And so for me, I was growing up with a different mindset because I wasn't in the typical family setup
Traditional
more or
family
less.
setting. Mm-hmm.
But but I was provided everything I needed, even though there were times when things were really hard. And so my mother had to go through a lot to take care of me, and she did her very best, I would say. And it got really, really, really tough, really hard. I had to change schools. I think by the time I was in high school, I had done about 68 different schools just because we kept moving and you
Moving.
know and
Okay.
all that. But she made sure that I was fine wherever I went to, even though she was extremely strict. I mean, strict to a fault, right? I thought I grew up with that strict. I grew up in a very, very strict environment. I thought I needed to always do the right things, or else I'll get the punishment for not doing that. And so, in hindsight, now I feel like it's made me a better person. But it's not everyone that takes that kind of strictness
Yeah.
in the good way. And so I had I would say I was exposed to different things, but I had to. My mom always said one thing, and she would say, "Remember where you're coming from, right?" And I had that in my mind every time. So even when I got to places where I made friends that were affluent and friends that had influence and everything, I always had to be reminded of the fact that I should remember where I'm coming from. And so, yeah, but my mom was very strict. I remember in high school, you normally would give her a list of things you want for high school. I would send her a list, and my mother would be like, take this out, you don't need this, you don't need this. I'm like, at the end of the day, what am I taking? But she's very strict and like, no, just do this. And so that's how I grew up. But interestingly like, enough, my little brother didn't experience that. Was he was not as my mom was strict, but not as strict as he was on him, right? And she tells me because I'm the girl, and so she has to give me an extra eye and all that. So, yeah, it's so interesting. I remember when I was very. This is something I see and laugh about because it's over now. But when I was very little, and I even had my first period as a female, right? I remember my mom would tell me, so now, if you have sex with a man, you'll be pregnant. That was the only conversation we had about that. So yeah, that was it. And there's no like, oh, like that is it. So he was very strict. I remember at the time when I was dating, I would say, "Oh, I'm going out." You know the term going out.
Yeah.
She'd be like, "Going out to where?" I'm like, "Oh, okay." So yeah, so that's the. Yeah. And I feel like at the end of the day, it just made me a better person, very independent. So in high school, I had a lot of responsibilities, also because of how I was brought up. I was in want of a better word, probably very hardworking, and so I was always the one in charge of a lot of things in high school. For instance, I remember being the bell girl, the one waking up the whole school, even at a very just when I entered then. So it was a lot of responsibility on my shoulder. So I've always been given a lot of responsibility right from childhood, and so that in itself also gave me some kind of confidence, right, to be an independent person. And right to college, and at some point I had to travel out of the country
Yeah.
for a year, and my experience outside the country for a year also shaped me, right?
Yeah.
It made me even more independent
Yeah.
of my family. And so I was always the one thinking ahead, what's my next plan? Okay,
Exactly.
what do I want to do next? What,
Exactly.
because I always felt I had to be responsible for how things ended up. And
Exactly.
my mom would always tell me, and she's very Christian, very prayerful. My mom would be the one who pray about something and say, let's leave it to God, right?
Okay.
And so for me, I knew that if I go to her with anything, it was going to go through prayer. So I would always take the bold step and ask her, and then we'll pray about it, and I'll take the next bold step. So I think in my early 20s, I was out of the country, and
Yeah.
that in itself shaped me a lot. It made me very independent, and yeah, that's just my life in a nutshell.
Wow. That's a really powerful story because despite the challenges, it kind of molded you into the woman that you are now. Independence, you were taught hard like to be hardworking and to be forward thinking. And because you knew like you have to account to your mother, or like there's this strictness around you, you have to sit up.
Yes.
You can't just live anyhow. You can't just let things go. And that really like contributed to you become, because I've known you, and like anytime I've seen you, I've watched you with so much admiration, like going through the
Thank you.
university. And like you speak Spanish. You're oh my gosh, like you're from Ghana, but you speak Spanish so fluently, and you even teach in Spanish. And like you've gone all the way to becoming a doctor. Like I have so much respect for you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I like your background really like put things into a better perspective for me. And I want to say thank you for sharing that piece of your story. So let's jump into motherhood. You're a mother of four, like power to you.
I know, I can't believe it. Yes, I'm a mother of four.
A mother of four. Can you walk us through before you became a mother? What were you doing in terms of career? I know you had gone through like university and everything, but just a little bit of career. Then we will jump into becoming a mother. Was it a decision, or you just went with the normal societal flow, like okay, you are married, so you have to give birth? Like walk us through a little bit of that.
Yeah, so I think prior to getting married and all that, I was into like higher ed back home in Ghana. I was teaching and all that, and so when it was time to come to school, I came to where I got my first master's degree, and that was in Spanish, as you rightly said. And so it was when I was in doing my first master's in Spanish that I got married, right? I think a year into doing my master's, I got married. And for me, I we had a plan, right? We knew we were going to have children, but it wasn't, the timing wasn't, oh, we'll do this after this, or we'll do this after that. It was just, we're married, if we are fine, we are happy to be with each other. So if children come along, that's totally fine, right? So I remember at the time when I was pregnant with my first, I was more or less a graduate assistant. I mean, I was a teaching associate at the time.
Yeah.
So I was teaching, and then I found out I was pregnant. And so that for me put me off a little bit, right? Because I was like, yeah, am I ready? And as much as I knew I was excited about having children, I was like, okay, maybe I lied. So initially I didn't take it in with a lot of joy or a lot of expectation, even though I knew I was ready, but I was like, how am I going to juggle all the many things going on in my life? And so it was a very, as it were, not so easy period of my life. I had to go through all the motions and still be able to fulfill all the roles I had to do in my career at the time. And so I remember, this was so many years ago. And so when I found out I was pregnant, I didn't know who to run to in terms of the resources around me in my institution. So I remember going to the women's center or something at the time and asking, is there anything for a pregnant graduate student? And they were like, no, there's nothing. I'm like, okay. I went back to my instructors at the time. I'm like, oh, this is the situation. And they're like, well, we can try, but we can't give you a lot of accommodations because there's nothing really stipulated that that is what should happen. And so I had to do everything like everybody else without, and in my mind, I felt like it is my decision that I am pregnant. And so nobody should feel, as it were, responsible for doing things to benefit me because it was my decision. That's how I've lived my life, right? I feel like it's my decision. And so in as much as I'll need extra accommodations or whatever it is from you, I also do not want you to feel that you are doing me a favor. It is my decision, right? And so I had that ingrained in my head that I had to force, I had to put in all the effort. So I remember in my state constantly going to classes, teaching, days I wasn't even strong. And so I think that towards the end, I would say maybe 2 weeks to when I was due, I think that was when I had to be prepared for comprehensive exam. So many things were going on, right? And it was difficult. I wrote my comprehensive exam earlier than everybody else, maybe 2 weeks before my colleagues wrote theirs. And it was in this professor's office, and they gave me a computer, and they're like, write the exam. And, I feel like, do I open Google and ask answers? Do I do this? And in my mind, I'm like, no, you do not, because you never know who is watching. It could be recorded. And so I felt like I needed to be very diligent. And so I did the work, very diligently. And my instructor even made a joke that, oh, you could have checked Google. I'm like, no, I won't do that, So I tried to be, I was always on my toes because I didn't want anyone to feel like I'm pregnant and so I'm going to be lazy about anything. And so right after writing the exam, the next week or the next day, I forget now, I had to defend it, right? So I remember I was heavily pregnant and I went for my defense, and it was hard.
Wow.
Now thinking about it, I remember when my husband brought me to work in, I was walking like a penguin. Right? So I went in and I sat down, and we did the oral exam, and they were all blown away. And I'm like, okay, we thank God, and I passed the exam. And right after the exam, the next day, I think we were in a car wash of some sort, and then my water broke, and then I had to rush to the hospital. That's how quickly I got into labor, and then we went ahead.
Wow.
So I remember the email that came out that, oh, this person has passed their comprehensive exam. For me, was Ethel has passed the comprehensive exam and has welcomed a new baby. So that was how mine was sent out, and I'm like, okay. So that was it was a very crazy period in my life.
I feel like standing up and giving you a standing ovation.
Thinking about it now, you're like, hey, did that really happen? But my husband was always pushing me, you can do it, And so even in my family, I'm like, I have no excuse. I owe it to this baby and myself and my family that this is going to happen. And so in terms of emotionally, it was a little balanced for me because I had my husband's support and all that. Even though he wasn't learning Spanish, I'll push him in the corner and read my things to him. I'm like, no, we need to do this. And when I'm tired, he's like, get up and do this, So that's how we went through the first baby as a TA at the time. And and the decision to continue having them, I felt like society has this way of doing things like, you need to be born, you need to go to school, you need to finish school. It doesn't even matter the type of school you're doing. They believe that once you need to finish school, well, that's what I think the society I'm from, you need to finish school, you need to start working, you need to, that progression is how we have been raised. So if you do anything slightly different, then it's like, okay, you are going against the norm technically. So that is how I felt, even though I was in grad school. I felt that it was like you're still in school technically. In my mind, I'd be like, what kind of school? I'm in grad school for crying out loud. So that's how I went through the first one. And
your story has me in tears. Like I'm just
continue.
I'm just blown away. Like all the way, like you're heavily pregnant. Let me emphasize that. Heavily pregnant, and then you had to be put in a room to write your exam, and then like right after writing your exam, like the next day or two, like your water broke, and then you had to go into labor. Like wow.
And the exam sitting down, I think it was maybe 3 to 4 hours. And as a pregnant woman in that very late stage of pregnancy, you need to use the restroom like every second. But I told myself, no. Like I had to, I didn't want anyone I don't know if it's a good thing, but I always felt I didn't want anyone to say because she is pregnant.
Yeah. Oh,
She
she got accommodation. Oh, because she
yes,
was pregnant.
because
Oh,
I didn't
yeah.
want anyone to ever use that against me,
Wow.
even though it's not a problem, but I also felt in my mind that no, I'm owning this moment of my life. So yeah.
Wow. Like, more power to you.
Yeah,
Yeah, and that's something that sometimes if we don't take it as women, we kind of like, find ourselves in that position. Okay, I am this, so because of that, everybody should give me accommodation or everybody should make space for me. But then the sometimes it goes a long way to have a negative impact on us, because even when you've worked so hard to get to a certain level in life, then somebody tries to remind you that, oh, you had this extra accommodation because you were a woman, or because you were pregnant, or because but you wanted to go against the norm and tell yourself, I am not going to let my pregnancy define who I become, or dictate the rules for me, or make somebody think they are doing me a favor. Oh my
yeah,
gosh, this is so
yeah, yeah,
powerful. This is
yeah,
so
yeah.
powerful. And you had your certificate and you had your baby. Oh, wow.
Yes. I still was looking swollen from having the baby, and that was how I went for my graduation. And so, yeah, and you would think that would be a deterrent for me to go and have
Exactly,
more children. I'm
exactly.
like, no, I'm in this phase of my life. I want to do this and get done with it. So,
Wow.
the decision to have other children was also more or less planned, and we agreed to go ahead. And so, even though the timing, of course, was very
Yeah.
close, so my second and first would be maybe a year and something apart. I can't remember now, but it was the second was also like, okay, we go again. So that one, I had finished the first masters and I was in the second one, and my decision to even do a second master's, even though I liked the second field I was going into, international studies, I still felt I needed to buy myself time because I was in this space of, children and all that. So in as much as I loved it, was also buying me time, right, as a woman to decide what my next steps would be. So the second one too was, and the interesting thing, they say that every pregnancy is different.
Yeah.
I truly believe that, and I believe that I'm a Christian, and I believe that God gives us situations we can handle,
Yeah.
right? And so I would say that I would say that from my first to the final pregnancy, it got worse in terms of how
Oh.
better it was. My first was there. That's what I'm saying. God gave me one that he felt I could handle, because at the time he was a very cooperative baby in the pregnant. Like I didn't have any complications, even though I had one that ran through all the other four, but I didn't have any issues, serious ones with him. It was easy. It was, yeah, he came on his due date, that kind of,
Yeah.
you know,
Everything was on
very,
point.
it was fine. I was strong. I was able to walk about, do everything normal. And I think part of it was what I told myself, that
Yeah.
I had to do it, right?
Yeah.
So it was ingrained in me, and God also allowed me the strength to do it. So as I got ahead, it got more difficult. So my second pregnancy there was this condition I had in the first that translated from the second to the third to the fourth. And so it was very difficult for me. The second one was a little difficult, but I was in the middle of, I was also almost done with my second master's at the time. I finished my second master's with the second pregnancy.
Pregnancy.
And so, yeah, so I think I missed my graduation even then, because I was too heavy and I wasn't in a good state of mind to
To
go. So,
attend the graduation.
yeah, so I had that second baby, and it was hard. That I for me, combining the two, and we say a lot of things about postpartum depression,
Yeah.
and I believe it's a thing. I believe it's a serious thing. We take it for granted. I would say my first was one that I struggled a lot with that, right? And it was like, okay, do I want this baby? That kind of, that whole feeling of, I don't know.
Did
I
I
had
really
that for
want it? Did I really want
so
it? Should I have done
yes,
it or shouldn't I have done it? That kind
yeah,
of thing. And then you're
yeah.
feeling like sorry for
So
yourself.
yes. It's I take it very seriously. It's one thing that's very dear to my heart. heart, and we overlook it a lot of times. But for me, the first was when I had that, it hit me really hard. But by the second, I was a little more, I understood the process. I knew what I was going to go through. And my husband, as always, very supportive. We are in this together. We shared our routines were kind of interlocked. I'll go to school, he'll watch the baby, I'll watch the baby, he goes to school. That was how things were.
Wow.
Very, we didn't have external help so much at the time.
Yeah.
It was just go to school, do this, that, and I think it really helped. Then COVID happened, right? And when COVID happened, everything shut down, and that for us, we were more or less excited that we were able to have to be in one space at the time and not have to go to school physically.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that really, really, really helped us.
Yeah.
And that was how we managed the two. And I took a break after the second, more or less, to re-strategize or realign everything I was going through at the time. I wanted to hop into a PhD immediately, right? But the program, I was going to continue in the Spanish, but I got admission to different schools, and I remember going for one school tour, however they call that, and it was there that it hit me, because it was a school outside of where I had my first degree and my first master's. And once I went through that other school, I'm like, no, this is not what I want. I'm moving the entire family to this other place, and so I decided, no, this isn't it. And I came back, and my husband and I prayed about it, decided our next move, and then I decided to go into instructional technology that I work in at now. And I think that was the best decision of my life at the time. And so I remember taking a year's break to more or less relax and realign my thinking and all that. And I jumped into the PhD right after.
And then through the PhD, you had other babies too.
Yes. But interestingly, I told myself that I wasn't going to have a baby in the same space for more than one baby in the same space, right? So I would say I got my first baby in my first master's, my second baby in my second master's, my third baby in my PhD, and my fourth baby outside of PhD, right? I didn't want anyone to feel like you are in this program and you're having 2, 3 baby, that alone in itself shouldn't be the right thinking. But because of how society has
exactly,
everyone feels like, oh, she's always making babies or something. I didn't want that. I did not want that label, right? And so I made sure that in as much as we were doing that, it was also sparse between the various spaces that I was, and that for me helped me. So yeah, my third was towards the end of my PhD, and no, not towards the end, it was right in the middle of it somewhere. It wasn't the easiest of things I did, but it was difficult, because at the time with him, COVID happened. He came in 21, and so COVID, and so his was more or less, a lot of it was during COVID, right? I had him during COVID, and that experience also was very different, because at the time, all my appointments I could go with my husband, right? But when COVID happened, all the appointments I had to go alone. And it was during the winter time, very cold, a lot of snow, but I had to drive through just to go for appointments, and it was hard.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah,
was there a time when you faced a very difficult challenge when you had to juggle motherhood and career? Can you tell us about an experience like that?
I probably have 1,001 of those, but the one I remember vividly that I say now and laugh is, I think, with either my first or my second, I can't remember, but I told you my husband and I share our schedule. Our
schedules were interlocked.
So there was one time he really needed to be in a meeting, and there was no way he couldn't be in that meeting, right? And I also had to teach at that same time. So, and this was the case at the time. I didn't have anyone around that I could hand the baby over to and go and teach. So I did what every mother from my part of the world will instinctively do. I wrapped him on my back.
You just say.
I took him behind me, and then I was teaching the students.
Oh my gosh!
Yes.
Oh my
husband
God.
came back right in between and took the baby back. It was some 20, 30 minutes I had to do that.
My God.
I remember the students were looking at me and they were like, So that day, the class wasn't about what we came to learn. It was about the baby.
It was
It was like, oh, do you have another bag? Is he comfortable? And I had to explain to them, he is totally fine. Back home, this is what we do and all that. And yeah. And so when you're in some situations, you are forced to take action. Like, think on the spot, right? And so
Wow.
I think another time I had to do the same thing. But this time, I didn't put him behind. I put him in the corner of the class, gave him a tablet, and then reduced the volume. And they were at the stage where they were controllable, right? And so he sat there the whole time, very behaved and all that. So I've had to do different things just to get to
Your story has meat, yes. I couldn't imagine. Like, I think there was a time when a certain photo was being circulated around social media when a mother had to, I think she had to paint or something. She was a painter, and because she couldn't get anybody to watch her child for, she had to wrap her child at her back and then paint, and it was circulated. And you teach at the university, and I can imagine these college students looking at you like, what is, and you're in America.
They were so fascinated. The class wasn't. That's why I tell you that day we didn't have any. I couldn't.
It was all about the baby.
Yes, they were like, what? They were just in awe. They were just, and for me, I felt, in as much as it was something different for them, I felt they saw something that they were not familiar with, right? And understood that different cultures have different way of approaching things. And so that for me made me happy that they saw that this is what other people do, right? The baby slept peacefully throughout the class. There were no interruptions.
Wow. I don't even know what to say. I don't even know what to say. But so I think I'm dumbfounded at this point. Like you are strong. Should I even say you're a strong woman? Like your story is one of courage and resilience and strength. Like, I have to do it. There's no ifs or buts, or I have to do it. Sometimes we gotta do what we gotta do. Like as mothers, and this is the real definition of the dairy mom. Like nothing is going to stop you from doing what you have to do in terms of your career, but at the same time you're also making sure your baby is safe. Because as Africans, we wrap our kids at our back all the time. I used to wrap my baby at my back when she was much younger, and they would sleep so soundly and they'll be fine. That was what we used to do. Because sometimes you have to do a lot of things, and you can't put the baby down because she's crying and then all that. So you just wrap the baby, at your back, and you had to do it in the classroom. Oh my gosh! Oh my God. So let me ask you, what. Because from the story you've described, there seems to be like lots of challenges here and there, but you've still pushed all the way through to becoming a doctor. I respect that. What is your biggest motivation? What keeps you going? What's your drive?
So, I would say that now that I have children and a family, I would say that they are my motivation, right? I look at them and I say, I don't need to feel, right? And part of it, connected to my family being my motivation, is also where I'm coming from, right? When I remember how things were, or how everything was for me, I owed it to myself to push through. So that in itself pushed me. The fact that now our children I had to be responsible for. And so I look at them and I'm very motivated. I remember towards the end of the PhD, it got very tough. I'm like, did I make the right decision? And to be frank, I wanted to call it off, the PhD. I'm like, I have 2 masters. I should be able to find something with that. And I should be able to be find a good career and all that. But my husband, interestingly, kept pushing me. He was like, no, let's do this. You can do it. Let's do it. Just keep pushing, And so there were so many times I threw in the towel. I'm like, look, I'm not, this interview, look, I would cry, I would break down and everything. And you'd be that, no, you will do it. You can do it. We will do it. Just keep pushing. So there are times when I would be coding and it's like, okay, let me help, here and there. And that in itself motivated me, because when I saw the effort he was putting into making sure that I succeeded at it, that for me was the height, right? And he got his PhD maybe a year, no, 2 years or 3 years before mine. And so he was saying, no, this is the time, just keep pushing. I was pushing things forward. I was doing things very slowly. He said, no, let's pile it up. You can do this. You can do this. So it was a big motivation for me when I saw the effort he was putting into pushing me to move ahead. So yeah, I remember when because I got into full-time career just around the time I was ending the PhD. So I was finishing the PhD and I was working full-time. And so that in itself is a challenge. And you have, at the time, I think I had 3 children. So I was like, no, this is too hard. I can't do this. He's like, no, let's keep it. I'll watch the children. You go ahead and do it. I'll be having interviews. You'll be upstairs with the children. I'll be coding. You'll be upstairs. Or you take the children out. There was a period he traveled with some of them just so I could focus on going to the library every day to work. I took time off work to focus. I think I took like a month off work. Was it? Maybe no, I couldn't take a month. Maybe 2 weeks off work, and I focused that 2 weeks. I'm like, I'm writing you, and I'm done with you. And he made sure he took care of the children. I probably would help cook and prep that all in the fridge, and then he would be feeding them, and I would have my peace of mind to work. So that for me was my motivation. I'm like, if I have this kind of person pushing me, then there's no way I have to
gosh. Oh my, you had me like I keep stopping my tears from flowing down because like it's so touching. And I want to say a very big thank you to your husband, Dr. Nana Boydum, wherever you are. I want to say a big thank you for supporting your wife and our friend and our colleague. This is big because and I think for us to get to the point where we will be able to, or where we are able to become the woman that we want to become, in terms of pursuing our ambitions, it all boils down to having a very good support system, and that is what your husband has really like displayed. It touched me the whole time, like how he was pushing you, like, let's do this, you can do it. And sometimes that's all you need to hear. Sometimes when everything else seems to be like negative in your ears and things keep pulling you down, you just need one voice that will tell you, you can do this, like push through, let's do this. And the person is giving you all the support, and then taking your kids away, traveling with them, just so you can have that peace of mind. Oh, this is so powerful. Like I'm so touched. Let's wrap up. What's your advice to mothers out there? What do you want to tell them?
So personally, there's this thing I always see that I said that earlier also about how society puts us in a bucket and expects life to be in a particular way, like my part of the world. But I want mothers to know that however it is you have that baby, right? That baby, you have to believe that baby is a blessing. However, whatever stage of life that you are and you had that baby or those babies, they are blessings from God. And so look at that and be encouraged, and don't let that stop you. We owe it to them and ourselves, right? To strive for excellence, strive for success, however, any form that means to us. So I feel like my advice would be just keep pushing. See them as blessings. So I would say that every child came with its different blessing. Every child's blessing is different, and I'm just blown away about how God does that. And so remembering that these children that we've been given are blessings, right? And because immediately we see them as a chore, we see them as, oh, this is another day of, in itself it drains you. That alone drains. And do everything normally. If you want to go for that associate degree, do it. You want that certification, do it. You want that. Don't let them be a stumbling block in that, because life is going on, right?
It's going on.
We're in our 20s, we are in our 30s, we are going on, so things are progressing. Yeah. So the more time we waste thinking that, oh, let me just, then the time is going.
The time is going. Yeah.
Life, things are just moving around very quickly now. Things we used to do in the past, even look at technology now, things are totally different. We went to PhD without ChatGPT.
Now there's ChatGPT.
Now there's ChatGPT and people are using that to do stuff. So things are changing, right? And so let's strive to be excellent, and then see the children we have as blessings that would reap off of one day. So and just move on with our lives.
Wow.
There are people who have had babies in very difficult situations, and so it's very difficult to see. Maybe the circumstances leading to having the baby wasn't a pleasant one, but that baby you are having is a blessing. So just be reminded of that.
Ethel Sefakor, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. It's been a great pleasure speaking to you, and I'm so inspired. And but thank you. I don't know what to say.
Thank you so much.
Thank you
for
so
having
much.
me. And it's a great thing you're doing. It's just amazing what you're doing here.
Thank you.
I'm happy that you're looking at sampling stories from different mothers. Yeah, we are normally, everybody thinks we have some superpowers, but it's not really. It's having the right support system, right? And so just keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you.
Just amazing.
Thank you. Wow, what an inspiring story. I hope you got a lot from Dr. Sefakor today. To recap, she mentioned that it is possible to balance motherhood and ambition, and do not let societal expectations stop you from becoming who you want to be as a mother. She also mentioned it is critical to have a very good support system around you, so be sure to find you one if you do not have one already. Thank you so much for joining us up until this point. If you want to find Dr. Sefakor, you can reach out to her on Facebook at Sefakor Boadum. You'll find that in the description of this episode. This brings us to the end of Dr. Sefakor's story. In our next episode, episode 13, we'll bring you another story from another mother. Be sure not to miss it. If you are yet to follow us on all social media platforms, please do so. You'll find us on Facebook at The Dairy Mom, on Instagram, I am _The Dairy Mom. On TikTok, you find us at The Dairy Mom, LinkedIn at The Dairy Mom, and on YouTube, of course, at The Dairy Mom. And if you are yet to subscribe to this channel, please do so by hitting the subscribe button and like this video, share, and let us know your comments. Let us know your thoughts in the comment section. Thank you once again for joining us up until this point. And as I wrap up my video, I always pose this question: what is your hashtag, The Dairy Mom Story? Join me and let's do this together. My name is Diana Adair, and I am The Dairy Mom.